tonight I'm going to be talking about my book, The Enemy Within, A Tale of Muslim Britain, which is really tracking the relationship between Britain and Islam, which goes back to the 7th century, and looking at how that's evolved over time, what some of the mistakes have been in that relationship, how the current sense of unease between Britain and her Muslims can be put right. So there's a whole section called Press the Restart Button, and hopefully at the end of it starting a very frank and honest conversation about the challenges we face and how we can deal with them. There are amazing cities like Leicester in the United Kingdom who, because of their history and their makeup, are really setting an example, not just for the rest of the United Kingdom, but actually for the rest of the world, to say, look, this is how we can be. I felt that the journey of Britain and Islam needed to be tracked, and that's why I wrote this book. Now, some people said to me, why did you call it The Enemy Within? Kind of an odd title to kind of call a book The Enemy Within when there's so many questions being raised about loyalty and belonging. And the reason I called it The Enemy Within was because I was called the enemy within. And interestingly, I gave evidence before the Home Affairs Select Committee, and one of the questions I was asked was, would it be better if we balanced some of the bad news stories about Muslims and maybe had some good news stories about Muslims? And I said, well, I'd just settle for accurate stories about Muslims. I'm not really bothered whether they're good news or bad news. I would actually just like a very fair depiction, and I would like journalists to be able to follow their own codes of conduct when writing those stories. And if they did that, I think we would be able to resolve the issue. What this book really does is it talks about who are the British Muslims, who are they, we, who are we, who is Britain, what's the journey and how did we get here, what are the errors that were made in the past, what is terrorism, what makes a violent jihadi, how does the state respond to that. I talk about the 7 sins of Islamophobia, the way in which the respectable rationalise bigotry. I actually quote from David Cameron's speeches back in 2005, 6, 7, and then I quote again from his speeches in 15, 16, 17. And I show the shift of how far he had moved, whereas I was still in the place where we were on 5, 6, 7. So I didn't fall out of love with my party. My party went on a little bit of a bender to the right. And at some point, I hope it's going to find its way back. And when it does, I'll be waiting to tell them I told you so.
I was really excited to come and see Baroness Warsi. I knew a bit about what she stood for and her political work, but I was just amazed to hear from every angle how inspirational she was. I just told some of my friends I would have stood up and clapped every sentence if I could.
My view is, if there is a mosque in town, there should be nobody in that town who eats hungry. There should be nobody in that town who sleeps on the street. There should be nobody in that town who doesn't have somebody to turn to. And if a mosque cannot do that, what is it there for? You can pray namaz on the street. You can pray namaz at home.
We have a woman that I can identify with, so a Muslim woman who rose to such a high position in cabinet. I mean, amazing. And yet had the principles to stand down for what she believed in. So I thought that was really worth coming to listen to what she had to say about that. And of course, she's faced so many challenges over the years, but still such a strong lady. So, an inspiration, I think, and to lots of people, not only Muslim women, but lots of women who face different, discriminatory practices in all walks of life.
Being a Muslim woman, double whammy, triple whammy actually. There was a report done by Maria Miller at the Women's Select Committee in Parliament where she said if you're a Muslim woman, you've got the triple whammy, gender, often race, and Islam as well. And I think, but I suppose describe it, I talk about misogyny in my book. And the way I like to do, rather than having a standoff, I like to see it as a journey. Misogyny is prevalent in all communities. I'm in Parliament. You want to see misogyny, come to Parliament. You want to see misogyny, come to the Dorchester, where we held an all-man's charitable thing and had girls running around in flimsy clothes. You want to see misogyny? Let's watch the President of the United States. Unfortunately, misogyny is in all aspects of life. So I don't know why we would assume that it wouldn't exist in religious communities or ethnic minority communities.
I'm just full of admiration that a lady that grew up on the same street as me, attended the same schools, and was subjected to the same traditional upbringing that I was, and the values that seem to fill the town that we were brought up in, has managed to achieve these things. I'm incredibly proud of her. An event like this epitomises what Leicester is about, actually. It represents the melting pot that Leicester is, not just of religions and cultures, but values, and the progression that's happening in Leicester and has been happening for quite a while. And I think in that sense Leicester stands to represent things that I think some of the country is still catching up with. So I think that her being here today and delivering this lecture is really important, and again a great privilege for the city.